Welcome to Arizona Roundup with Stuart Rosebrook at Charlotte Hall Museum. My special guest today is Katie Haber. We are talking between Prescott and Los Angeles, California. And Katie, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Katie, I think that our paths crossed when I was a young boy here in Prescott, Arizona, and you were a young woman.
You have to emphasize that.
Well, you were a young woman.
Thanks for making a note of that I was an old bag already and you were still a kid.
No, you were a young woman on the set here working for Sam Peckinpah and Joe Wazan on Junior Bonner in the summer of 1971. But the story that brings you to Prescott starts before then, growing up in Great Britain. And were you raised in England? And with England in the soccer match, the World Cup, there's so much online like, well, this is England, this is Great Britain, this is the United Kingdom. Obviously, you were raised in the United Kingdom, but were you raised in England?
I was born and bred in London.
In London?
In London, because my parents escaped the Holocaust in 1939 and came to England because America wouldn't take many of the refugees.
That's right.
And for that reason, my father was a huge lover of England. And you know, if at any time, you know, someone used to say, Henry, his name was Henry, you have an accent. Where are you from? And he always used to say, I'm British.
Oh, I love that.
And the funny thing was, you know, my dad had a great sense of humor, but, you know, when you learned how to drive in England, you always had a letter L on the back of your car, you know, for learner, you know, and or the car that you were learning how to drive in. I don't know if it was your car or you know, the actual teacher's car, but L was for learner. And my father came home one day and he said, I just saw another car with GB on it. And GB stood for Great Britain. In other words, you know, if you were USA, you would have an American flag, but GB was Great Britain, not England. And my father said he thought that it was for learners, and GB stood for getting better.
I think that everyone growing up in Los Angeles who learns to drive in that city maybe needs one of those labels. It would help you know, oh, they're still getting better at driving.
But I suppose after our long relationship, you realize I do have quite a good sense of humor.
Oh, yes.
And I have the honor of getting that from my dad, who was, you know, really very funny. He always used to say that, you know, when he was sitting in Czechoslovakia with his friends having coffee in Prague, they would always have their pen and paper handy, because he was always so funny that they wanted to quote him in the plays that they were writing and the movies that were making. So I'm honored to say I have my father's sense of humor.
Well, I think you
in
do.
This interview, if I say something funny, you'll realize I got it from my dad.
Well, I love that. And did you grow up going to the movies in London, which was a center of culture in Great Britain?
Well, you know, not. I mean, I used to go with my dad to movies growing up, and but I never before a tragedy happened, wanted to be in the film business. I was always going to follow in my father's footsteps and hopefully become a doctor.
I've read that you were on your way.
My father was a doctor, and a very, very prominent doctor. In fact, you know, as soon as he came to England, you know, he became, you know, a professor at Edinburgh University of dermatology, and he was, you know, he was a much sought after doctor. But the Holocaust was a terrible revelation for him, because he lost all his family and his brothers and their children and all the rest of it. And when he was made honorary professor at Edinburgh University, some of the doctors went up with him, and he wanted my mom to go with him, but she couldn't because she was getting ready to have a surgery. And I remember saying goodbye to him, from the bathroom, because I was getting ready for my summer job selling handbags in a major department store. And he called out goodbye, and I said, goodbye, see you on Saturday. And while he was up in Edinburgh, with all his other doctors, he committed suicide because of the Holocaust.
Oh,
and
it's crushing.
It was, it was something that I've lived with for the rest of my life.
Oh yeah.
It was because he, I went into therapy with a lot of different doctors and therapists. And they all said, you've got to understand that your father abandoned you. And I'll say, I'll never, ever, ever accept that. I just have the guilt of not realizing what pain he was in and not being there for him. So
right.
Then to this day, I take on responsibility for it.
Oh my gosh, Katie.
Yeah.
And so you found yourself at this crossroads of your life.
So I was going to become a doctor, but when my father died, I didn't want my mother to spend a fortune, sending me to college to study medicine, and so I said, no, I won't become a doctor. But my father was an ardent filmmaker. He had an 8mm camera with him wherever he went. And in fact, if you ask me how much of your life do you remember growing up, I would always say, I always say, I don't know, because I have all my life on film. And
how interesting.
And I don't know if my memories of my childhood are from the films that my father took of me, or or my own memories, So, and I have all my dad's films on YouTube. I have my own YouTube thing. So if you ever want to be bored, I can send you all my movies, and you can see.
Well, I'd love to sit down and watch those, Katie. That's remarkable. And
and anyway, so my father, was a filmmaker, from childhood, from very young upwards, and had he not become a doctor, I know he would have become a film director.
Right.
Because he made his own films and even made some films, and he did his own titles and little for the little short films that he made with his 8mm camera.
What a story.
When you say, were you always interested in film? I was interested in film because of my father, not my father's filmmaking of me.
And life. film, and so that art form and that film has been part of your life since you were a child. It's in your in your soul.
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
And so how did you find yourself going? You were thinking about medical school, and suddenly you start working in the television, the BBC, or film business?
No, I went to a job finder's place, and I said I wanted to work in the film industry, and I immediately found a because I had all that experience, and I ended up working for the Rank organization, which was the British film distribution company, and in the design department. So that was my first job in the film industry.
Well, what year was that? 68, 69, 70?
Yeah, it's, oh my God, yeah, in the late 60s. And then in the late 60s, I went to work for an American film producer who was in England, and produced a really stupid film called Prudence and the Pill, which was a movie with David Niven and Ursula Howells and blah, 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 and Deborah Carr. And so I worked with him on that, and then another film. And then he went back to America. And that's when I was wondering, where I was, what I was going to do, and that's when I got a call from someone called James Swan. And he said, are you working at the moment? And I said, no. And he said, well, there's an American film director in town who's here to direct a film. And he's looking for an assistant. And his name is Sam Peckinpah.
And the rest is history.
And the rest is history, as they say, because the first conversation I had with him, I said, I called him up, and Sam said, oh no, Sam called me because this producer gave him my number, and he said, I hear you're interested in looking for work. He said, can you come and meet me? And I'm at MGM Studios, MGM in London. Can you be here in half an hour? And I said, no, I'm at Wimbledon watching the tennis. And he said, well, forget it then. And I thought, oh, I'm glad I don't have to work for that guy, because that's not someone I'd want to work for. So I spent the next 2 weeks at Wimbledon, which is my passion. I mean, I've been watching Wimbledon, as well as the British as the soccer championships at the same time this week, these past weeks, and I kept going to Wimbledon, didn't think about Sam anymore, and then at the end of 2 weeks, when Wimbledon was over, I got another call from Jimmy Swan, the producer, and said, that director I was telling you about has been through 3 or 4 different assistants, and none of them want to live by the schedule that he lives. In other words, no lunch, no tea, no dinner. You're working for me. And he said, you want to give him a call? So I called him up and I said, hi, my name is Katie Haber. I hear you want me to give you another chance. And I went to work for him on Straw Dogs.
Well, that is a perfect place for us to take a break and thank our sponsors, and then we will be back talking with Katie Haber on her career in Hollywood, in Los Angeles, and her mark on making film history, and her origins growing up in London, England. We'll be right back with Katie Haber on Arizona Roundup with Stuart Rosebrook.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Katie. Already we have the beginning of a great program. And thank you very much. We look forward to the continuing rest of this incredible story. Hey, Stuart said, Stan, make sure that this entire program gets promo number 1. That's right. This entire program is wonderfully an entertaining trailer, bit of a teaser of a great and wonderful special event taking place in Prescott, the mile-high cowboy city, America's favorite hometown, at the Charlotte Hall Museum on August 5th. Junior Bonner celebrates the film's 55th anniversary. Well, that's what this whole program is all about, and so we encourage you, as you listen, enjoy, embrace the stories, and then say, my family, our friends, we're going to make a whole party, and we're going to spend that evening on August 5th. We're going to be at the show, at the Junior Bonner Show. So make sure that you make those plans, and then go to charlottehallmuseum.org, charlottehallmuseum.org, And there you can make your reservations and get ready to have one of the premier events. I really mean that, one of the premier events that will be part of Western movie history and perhaps a little bit of the Western literature that is a part of what we're building and promoting and the traditions that we're trying to keep going right here at the Charlotte Hall Museum, right here in Prescott, Arizona. So that's what this program is all about, so let's get right back to it.
Welcome back to Arizona Roundup with Stuart Rosebrook at Charlotte Hall Museum. And my special guest today is Katie Haber, who we're speaking with from Los Angeles, and about her career in Los Angeles and in the Hollywood film industry. And we're coming up on the 55th anniversary of the production of Junior Bonner, which was your second production with Sam Peckinpah, the great American director. And but we just before our break, when we thanked our sponsors, we were talking about how your career intersected with Sam's and began your long career with him in filmmaking, began in London on his film Straw Dogs, which was released, what, in 1971? 71?
71.
Right.
We shot it in 70 and it came out in 71, I believe.
And that was much of it was filmed on location. Is that right?
All of it.
All of it.
It was all in the south of England. Yeah.
Which he loved filming on location, and which has its stress, and it's anyone who's worked on films and television. There's the filming on studios and studio backlots, but filming on location, you have great experience with, Katie, and that had to have been quite eye-opening working with Sam on Straw Dogs, which is a film of that era. It's definitely one of the strongest films about violence and the human condition ever filmed, and you were right in the middle of it.
Yeah, well, it's about an American who goes to England to get away from the Vietnam Wars and as a pacifist, and comes up against the locals in England and becomes the opposite of the pacifist he was in the country that he left.
And is that Dustin Hoffman, one of his early films?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And Dustin was the star, and Susan George played his wife. And Susan George lived in England and brought him over. Not Susan George, his wife brought him over to England, to get him away from the wars and
all the violence
protests and the violence of America.
And there was but Sam always had a film company. Isn't there one of his favorite actors who had just been in The Ballad of Cable Hogue? Were there actors that followed him from, I'm not sure, Wild Bunch, but in the Cable Hogue? Was David Warner, was he in Straw Dogs?
David Warner was in Ballad of Cable Hogue.
Right.
And he gave that wonderful speech when Cable died. He said, "Take him, Lord, but do not take him lightly."
All right.
That was David Warner in Ballad of Cable Hogue, which was one of Sam's non-violent, love story films, which was the movie he did before he came to England.
Which is interesting because he did have that pattern there for a while with the Wild Bunch and then Cable Hogue and then Straw Dogs and then Junior Bonner and then on to the Getaway. And from the articles I've read, there's an article in Rolling Stone magazine where he's talking about, I've got 5 films lined up. You're on the set of the Getaway. And he had that pattern, I think, that was very healthy for him, in which he balanced his his direction as an artist and as a director. But that had to have been a very interesting introduction to working with Sam and working on location, Katie, on that film in your home country with Sam, tackling such a topic in such an era of turmoil in the world. It had to have been.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it was such a violent film and such a antagonistic film that it in England they didn't allow it to go to DVD for 12 years. You know, it was banned.
Is that right?
Oh yeah.
And it's right up there with Clockwork Orange and Deliverance, and
At exactly the same time as Clockwork Orange, you know, which was also a very violent film.
Right.
And all the major critics, you know, were always comparing the two films.
Right.
You know what was more violent. I remember during that time there was a lot of media, media attention of the violence of the film.
Well, it's interesting that Sam was right in the middle of all that.
Oh yeah, and not only was it a man-on-man violent film, there was always a major rape scene in Straw Dogs.
Right.
You know, and
Didn't he have to fight? Didn't he have to fight an X rating when it first was in its first edit?
Oh, I can tell you, one of the funniest moments I ever had on that film was working with Dan Melnick and John Trevelyan, who was, the censor at that time, the British censorship corporation that brought out the ratings. It was X or X rating or an R rating or a PG, and I had to sit. Well, I don't know, lie on the ground actually, not sit, with Dan Melnick and John Trevelyan, because the rape scene in Straw Dogs was a double rape, and it was one of the guys who actually dated her before she went to America, not Susan George in the role she played. And they were dating, and it started off as a love scene, and then it became a rape scene. And in the middle of him raping her, one of the other guys of the gang came in and turned her over, and and this is how do I say this without sounding how can I, anyway, and raped her from the rear, from behind. Is that okay to say?
Shocking. Well, it's shocking. It was shocking to filmmakers, film viewers all across the world.
Okay, and I lay on the ground with not laying on the ground, but we were also looking at an angle and watching that scene, and the rating depended. If it was a rear entrance, it would have been X, and had it been the other entrance, it would have been an R, and they decided that it was an R, and so I was there when the movie got the R rating, because of that angle of the entry.
Mm. Well, Sam was
okay?
very provocative in his filmmaking, obviously.
Yes,
and,
he was.
And provocative in his life. As we talk about the, Junior Bonner being filmed here in Prescott in the summer of '71, part of the backstory that I was told by my father, the screenwriter, Jeb Rosebrook, was that Steve had signed on. Steve had signed on to the script. Joe Wazan had the script ready by December of 1970, and Steve read the script and invited them up to his house, and Nellie was there with the children, and they say it. Steve had all kinds of questions on the script, but signed on. Solar Productions, and wanted to do it, and then Joe had sent it to Sam, and they were back from England editing the film, and as you know, Sam always liked to test people. My dad told the story.
But you have to say, editing the film, that Sam and the editors on Straw Dogs, Sam was in the middle of editing Straw Dogs in England when Joe Wazan offered him Junior Bonner, and Sam loved the idea and said he would do it, and Joe Wazan said he'd have to come to Prescott almost immediately, because there was an existing rodeo and an existing parade that Sam could shoot before Steve even came onto the film. And so Sam took his two editors, Roger Spottiswoode and Garth Craven, on Straw Dogs, and took them with him to Prescott, Arizona, and put them in a motel so that he could do his pre-production and eventually shooting of the rodeo, and at night go into the motel and cut Straw Dogs. And he said, goodbye, Katie. Next time I'm in England, I look forward to working with you again. And I was left behind. And about, I would say a week later, I get a call from Sam saying, get your fucking ass over here. We got another movie to make. And I turned to my mother and I said, Mommy, I'm going to America to do a rodeo picture. And my mother said, you're going where? To do what? And that's how I ended up in Prescott. And I had no idea that I was ever going to, be with Sam again on any film. I had no idea that I'd be in America, but he decided that I was a valuable contribution to him on Straw Dogs, and needed him, just to be there.
Right. Yeah, I know that that was one of the things that Sam was very loyal to his friends and the people that he could count on, and he built that team around him that helped bring the successes he had in filmmaking, and you were part of that for a really long time. And you must have been quite dramatic for you to have flown over from London and land in Phoenix and be brought up here to Prescott. That's a little bit of in through the outdoor, and suddenly here in Prescott, Arizona, in 1971 on location in the mountains of Arizona.
It was like being uprooted, totally uprooted, because, I'm a child of the Holocaust, mm-hmm. living a very protected life in England, because my birth, replaced so many other people that my parents held me in such high esteem. I talked to a lot of friends of mine, or people that I've met who said, having had a terrible childhood and never being able to, to relate to their parents. And it's something I never, ever, ever had. I had the most loving and attentive and adoring parents that any child could ever have. Again, because I replaced so many people they lost, and
mm-hmm.
they lost, and then they found,
right,
and their finding was me. So I felt guilty leaving my mother behind. Who had just experienced all the
loss of your father, and
the loss of my father and loss of her family,
mm-hmm.
And I have tons of stories to tell about. It was because of Sam I found out everything I needed to know about my family and the Holocaust, but that's another conversation.
Right. Well, let's take another quick break here and thank our sponsors. We're having a great conversation with Katie Haber today about her career in Hollywood and her working relationship with Sam Peckinpah. And when we get back, we're going to talk about the summer of 71 in Prescott, Arizona, and the making of Junior Bonner with Katie Haber and Sam Peckinpah and Steve McQueen and a great cast. And we'll be right back on Arizona Roundup.
Well, I was right. It is already a great program, and we're only about halfway there. So stay tuned. Hey, perhaps you want to call somebody up and say, hey, listen to this program. It's really great. Make sure you tune in to Charlotte Hall Museum and to Arizona Roundup. And again, yes, a word from our sponsors, and this is a word of thanks to our sponsors. On behalf of Stuart and the entire Charlotte Hall Museum board, staff, and friends, we want to thank you for sponsoring this program, and a number of you within the community. And we just want you to know that we appreciate your ongoing support and your sponsorship of this program. A number of you have made a point, and we talk about you, and now you know who you are, and we want to thank you profoundly for making this fine program and all of the programs of Arizona Roundup possible. So an Arizona high five, an Arizona Roundup, thank you very much for sponsoring all that we do right here in Prescott, Arizona.
Welcome back to Arizona Roundup with Stuart Rosebrook at Charlotte Hall Museum. And my special guest today is Katie Haber, who is going to be a special guest with us on a night here in Prescott, Arizona, celebrating the 55th anniversary of the making of Junior Bonner in Prescott. And Katie, you were a very essential part of that film's success, being on location. And in our previous segment, we were talking about the fact that your first film working with Sam was all on location in the south of London, south of England, and
South of England.
And that you were
in Cornwall.
It was in Cornwall.
Yes.
Wow, and that's such a dramatic place in itself.
Oh yeah.
And in the hinterland of Great Britain, and here you are then travel all the way across the ocean to come to the United States and land in Phoenix in the middle of summer, where it's probably 115 degrees, and you drive up to Prescott and join the film crew here in pre-production and for the summer of 1971, making Junior Bonner. And so you've been transformed to another part of the world, totally different, but a small town unto itself, in which the production company inhabits the city for, most of half of June and all of July and half of August, and really becomes part of the community. It had to be quite an introduction to America before going to Los Angeles to live that summer here in Prescott.
Oh, I didn't go to Los Angeles. My trip to Prescott was the beginning of a series of films that were with Peckinpah, but were almost nothing in between. So I didn't really get to Los Angeles until many years later. I mean, in between, to change my underwear, to change it. I was living with Jerry Fielding, who did all the music for Sam's films. Briefly in a room in his house. But I was in Prescott, and then all over Texas in the Getaway, and then a lot of films in Mexico. So when you say got to Los, I didn't really establish myself in Los Angeles until the end of Peckinpah.
and that's an interesting part of the aspect of filmmaking, is that you were really a gypsy on the Peckinpah filmmaking.
On the Peckinpah Trail. On
the Peckinpah Trail. And coming to Prescott in 1971 and what's captured in the film, we look back 55 years, that there is not another film that captures the atmosphere and the community of Prescott around its famous World's Oldest Rodeo better than Junior Bonner.
Small town America.
Right.
Was my first step into the USA.
And so during that production, you also, you made lifelong friends with, Steve McQueen and Ben Johnson and Ida Lupino and obviously Frank Kowalski and Sam's crew. It had to be quite a reflective.
Gordie Dawson.
Right. And Lucian Ballard.
Yeah, I was, instigated into a life of Peckinpahian supporters and adversaries, because there were many that loved and adored him, but there were many that hated him, and I did a documentary, a documentary many years ago called "I Was Sam Peckinpah's Girl Friday," and then I added "and Saturday and Sunday," and the documentary was with me. Ali McGraw, who did 2 films with Sam and me, and who I'm still very close friends with, and Mark Commode, who was a very famous and still is a very famous critic and actually a documentary filmmaker. And he said something that was very interesting, because when you say, what did I do for Sam? He said, and I'm quoting because I've got the book in front of me, and said, in fact, Malcolm is convinced that without Katie, there would be no later Sam Peckinpah films at all. It wasn't completely fanciful to say. She co-directed all the movies that she made with him because she was allowing the director to direct. In other words, she enabled him.
Mm-hmm.
So if you ask what I did for Sam Peckinpah, I always quote Mark Commode and say I was his enabler.
Well, every photo I've seen of you on at Junior Bonner, you're 3 feet from Sam. I mean, he's waiting to make decisions. You're his counsel. You're his, you're at the heart of the making of the movie.
His defender as well,
Mm-hmm.
and when Sam almost got him most of his creative abilities on the film when he was actively at war with the producers. The more he was at war with the producer, the more creative he became, because the anger spurred on his creativity. And so I was sort of a go-between, between the producers and Sam. If they would call me up and say, "Where is Sam?" and I would maybe not find an excuse or find some way of him not having to speak to them because I knew that anything he would say would, to destroy the position he was in, or even, so I enabled him to be able to work and direct and be creative by sort of fielding off any attacks from negative people.
Well, let's talk about that summer of 71, because it's very interesting. Sam had developed a very good relationship with my father, Jeb, who was the screenwriter. This was his big break in Hollywood, and had my dad on set all summer, which is, you tell people that and they're like, the director had the writer on set all summer. I said, yeah, there was a very good relationship. It was at times not great, but it was a creative, atmosphere. My dad was very competitive. He understood what was at stake. Joe Wazan was here much of that summer, the producer.
Right.
Steve McQueen had a piece of the film. He was also saw himself as a producer. ABC's
as well as the Getaway.
As well as the Getaway, and with Solar Productions. But ABC rarely, if they ever did, send anyone over here. But I don't think I've ever asked you, did Joe and Sam have a good relationship that summer?
Sam had never had good relationships with producers because, as I said, if it was good, he would create problems in order to make it difficult. I remember when he was on this, what was the movie he was fired off just before?
Cincinnati Kid?
This Cincinnati Kid. He always used to say to the producer, he's the only man I know that goes home to change his sweat.
And so Steve had to have been a real go-between in that triangulation that summer between Joe and Steve and Sam.
Yeah.
And Steve had to have been a balance because Steve had a piece on it, and he and Sam had history, as you just mentioned, on the Cincinnati Kid. Yeah. And so, of course, that was healed in that film because they went on to make The Getaway right after Junior Bonner. And he had Lucian Ballard with him, who is one of the finest cinematographers of his era in Hollywood history. So you have this great confidence in your camera crew. I mean, your whole cinematography team is outstanding. You've got, you go through the crew list and you can see Sam's fingers on the whole thing. But then casting, Joe Don Baker gets cast as Curly Bonner versus maybe L.Q. Jones or somebody, Warren Oates, or someone else from Sam's company.
Repertory company.
Right. And because Joe Don had just made a film for Steve. So to me, I've reflected on the film that there's this interesting balance that's happening that whole summer that makes the film successful.
Right.
And doesn't kind of go off the rails. I did read some of the materials in that are at the Academy Library where Joe leaves to go make his next film, and
Exactly.
Sam and Steve say, "Well, we got more pickups, we got more to do here," and then afterwards, ABC, of course, one of the producers from ABC is like, "Well, you went over budget and you filmed longer," and Sam's like, "Well, that was Steve's fault. Steve wanted to do that. I should be getting my bonus." And the producer at ABC is like, no, I don't think so. And so it's interesting, those little fine lines. But again, as the son of the writer,
Every film for Sam was a maneuver,
right?
and he played the field, he played his people, and reaped the benefits or the disadvantages from his playmaking,
So
it was all
let's talk about one of those scenes, though, Katie. One of those scenes where you're in the middle of it. I've seen the stills. There's a famous scene where Ida Lupino and Steve McQueen are having breakfast together, a piece of pie at her house. She plays his mother. You were there. There's very few people who could talk to Steve McQueen, give Steve McQueen directions. But isn't that the magic of the film, that you have these veteran actors, Ben Johnson, Ida Lupino, and Robert Preston on set with Steve, who's usually the center of the film, and Sam.
He was surrounded by his peers. He was surrounded by, Ida Lupino was the first ever female film director.
Right.
One of the most wonderful moments in time that I had was sitting at the feet of Ida Lupino and Robert Preston and listening to old Hollywood stories.
Oh my gosh.
And I was dumb enough not to write everything down, because I just, I could have written a book about what I was listening to. But, here I was with, some of the top movie makers of the century, or definitely of that decade.
Right.
And it was just tasting Hollywood from every aspect.
On the set in Prescott, Arizona.
On the set, it was just brilliant. I mean, there's a wonderful picture of us all sitting around.
Right.
Do you have that picture?
Yeah, it's a wonderful picture. Yeah. It captures a moment of what made that picture special that summer.
Yeah.
And it was a refuge.
I love the picture of me behind Sam, sitting behind him in the courtyard of the
umbrella.
With the umbrella. I mean, that's a real typical thing. And then a lovely picture of Lucian Ballard and me on the bumper of the camera car.
Right.
Or a picture of Lucian and I think Steve. I'm not sure, but I'm. You can only see me in the side mirror of a car, and that's another.
Oh, that is a beautiful picture. I know that.
I treasure. That
one's up near Jerome. Yeah. It's a.
Who has that opportunity? The opportunities that I had. This little Jewish girl from London, all of a sudden, in the middle of Hollywood. It was just, and I think I took it all for granted and it's only in retrospect when I look back on it, when the gift that I was given to be there.
Well, and that's the thing about that summer is that you probably had no idea that this Sam Peckinpah, this circus was going to continue, that, as the summer ended, there was the next
for
picture.
Another 8 years.
Right, another 8 years. That's right. And, but as we look back on that 55 years ago from that film being made here, both Sam and Steve really admired that picture that they did together. It's a softer picture. It's a slice of Americana. It tells a story it's a family picture, very Steinbeck in many ways.
And I was going to say, it's about family.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's so amazing. And what you always have to realize, about Steve is that he never had family.
Right.
You know, he spent most of his youth in a youth. I call it a borstal because that's what they call it in England.
A boys' home.
Boys' home.
Yep.
You know, and looking for his father. And he only found his father a week after his father had died.
Mm.
You know, and his mother was an alcoholic. I mean, Steve never had family, and he grew up, you know, in a situation where all he wanted was family. So that's why Junior Bonner appealed to him so much.
Yeah,
because it's him confronting his father.
Right. And that scene at the train station, I've
Yes.
talked to a number of people, including author Kip Stratton, who's didn't know his father either growing up, and he said my father started getting letters from people like Kip and others who wrote him and said, that is my relationship with my father. I have gone to Prescott to sit on that bench at that train station.
Yeah.
And it's a very powerful film, reflective of a creative team that summer who came together, and it was it really holds up as we look back on it. And Prescott still debates open space and growth, and so it was fairly prophetic as well. And when I talked to my father about it, the one thing he talked about that was remarkable to him was that, and again, in the moment you may not realize it, but in reflection, he said the script spoke to Steve. He wanted to do it right away. Sam read it. He wanted to do it. They were all 5 years apart. My dad was 5 years younger than Steve, 10 years younger than Sam. And they all had some family history that came out on the complications of their three families in that script and in the film.
Yeah.
And
as far as I remember, I don't think Sam did many changes to the script, you know, because usually he was avidly, you know, writing, but I can't remember. Well, maybe he did when he got there and before I got there, but maybe I'm wrong, but I don't remember him doing many.
The story we have that my dad, after Junior Bonner, the gift that kept on giving from Sam Peckinpah, not only a relationship that my dad had with Sam and with you and Ben Johnson and many others and my mom, was the people he introduced my father to, especially Max Evans. And
oh my God.
Max told my father years later, he said, Jeb, Sam sent me the script. And he said, I think you should come to Prescott and help rewrite this. And he said, Sam doesn't need any damn rewriting. Get Jeb over there and have him, you know, he's your guy. I'm not touching it. And so Max later on told my dad that story. And the one reason that my dad was on set all summer, and it was his big break in Hollywood. And as I've watched the film as his son many years later, realizing that I'm hearing the voice of a writer who needs as big a win in his adopted hometown as Junior Bonner does in the film. And it was a Hollywood moment for our family that
it was.
Changed the direction of my father's life and our family. And I'm
proud to say I was a part of it.
You were, and your being part of it, Katie, is why the film was a success and is looked back on as one of Sam's and Steve's best films. It's not the action pictures, it's not the Wild Bunch, but it reflects, I think, to me, the literary side, the Renaissance side of Sam, who was a deep thinker. You know it better than the rest of us, but I always felt that there are so many layers to the literature of Sam Peckinpah and his films that come out in the creativity of his pictures. And Junior Bonner sits in the middle of those. And the most violent scene is the destruction of the family homestead.
Yep.
And
yes, indeed.
And I was talking to someone about the film today, and they're from a small town in the West, and they were disturbed by the film when they saw it. And I think that it still has.
I wish I'd kept the masks that we were wearing during that day because of all the sand that was in the air, because I could have used them through COVID.
Well, let's take another quick break and thank our sponsors, and we'll be right back. And I want to talk more, Katie, about your career and also the great charity work that you have done in Los Angeles to help change the direction of so many lives your adopted city in California. We'll be right back with Katie Haber on Arizona Roundup.
Well, the final word of thanks to our sponsors. And who is that? It's you. We thank those of you who are regular, not only in your attendance and your support and your advocacy for the Charlotte Hall Museum, but many of you have made the decision to join us and be an ongoing member, a part of our advocacy and sponsorship team. So again, a word to our sponsors. Thank you very much, and please, may I encourage you, if you really want to have a participating place and a point to keep these stories and these traditions of the Western world, the good things that came out of all of the traditions, keep that idea alive as amplified and exampled by Charlotte Hall herself. So go to charlottehallmuseum.org, charlottehallmuseum.org, and sign up. Join us. Be a member. We would be grateful. Well, now it's time for the rest of the story.
Welcome back to Arizona Roundup with Stuart Rosebrook at Charlotte Hall Museum. And I am with a special guest today, Catherine Haber, MBE. And Katie, you have had a remarkable life, a remarkable career in the Hollywood film business. I think we should remind people, as we talk about Junior Bonner, its 55th anniversary, of your career in Hollywood and then how it led you to become just a leader in your community in Los Angeles. You started on Straw Dogs in 1970 and was working with Sam Peckinpah that brought you to the United States on Junior Bonner in the summer of 71, hit the road on the Getaway, made almost immediately afterwards, and was released not too many months after Junior Bonner. And then from the Getaway off to Mexico for Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid.
Yep.
And then
Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia.
An overlooked film. It's definitely in his pantheon, Sam's pantheon of the West. People need to go back and take a look at Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia. And
especially the work of Warren Oates, who was one of Sam's repertory company and one of the great actors of many forgotten actors of our age, of the decade of the century.
He chews up every scene in The Wild Bunch prior to Ballad of Cable Hogue, and of course going all the way back to Ride the High Country. Warren Oates is someone many people should go back and watch his film career. Just a remarkable American actor. And
a sweet, gentle human being that I will never, always honor my friendship with him. He was just very special.
My dad has a quote from him after the screening of Junior Bonner in Beverly Hills. He was sitting behind my dad and he says, "That was a poem." And very thoughtful man and wonderful actor. And so after died far too young. Right? Another
49 when he died.
It's a tragedy to have been
1 year younger than when Steve died.
Right. And then following Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, is that Killer Elite? Does that follow that up to San Francisco?
Killer Elite in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
And after Killer Elite was one of my real favorites, which was Cross of Iron in Yugoslavia.
And I think, Katie, maybe the first time I met you as an adult, because I'd met you, we'd gone out, I think out to Malibu, and I saw you out there when we were a family out there meeting with Sam. But I remember, and will never forget, going to UCLA to see that film for the first time in a screening. And you were one of the hosts of that film. And as the evening started, suddenly Sam's voice came in the surround sound speakers from his cassettes from his notes on the film.
Right.
And it was the most eeriest screening I think I've ever been in. And is it Robert Vaughn who was with you that night? Who was your partner in introducing the film? Because you spoke of it so eloquently that night, and then the lights go down.
Was it Paul Cedar or was it some? Was it? It wasn't James Coburn. No.
No.
Who did you say?
I thought it was Robert Vaughn.
No, Robert Vaughn had nothing. Well, Robert Vaughn was at some of the screenings, but not Across the Iron, unless that's who you remember. But
it was at the screening at UCLA when it was a retrospective look, probably 1985 to 87, somewhere in there, I think, unless it was 1990, 89, 90, and you were screening the film, and I've never sat the opening and closing credits at that film. If no one's ever seen Across the Iron, watch it for the opening and closing credits, which are some of the most dramatic of any film made of World War II.
Those are the credits that those are the pieces that I went to. Because Sam, at the end of Cross of Iron, sent me to Hamburg in Germany,
mm-hmm.
and to the film where all the film
library,
and also to the British War Museum to get special from Second World War films, and the opening and closing credits were from my research at the Hamburg and the War Museum and the British War Museum. I got all those credits.
Yeah, it's a very dramatic movie, and those credits, from my perspective, when I said, don't watch the credits, the opening and the closing. It's the most dramatic filmmaking of the film itself. It's
yeah. Absolutely, I can take credit for getting those those film segments.
It's got your hand on it, Katie.
And it was tough for me to go there. Here I was in Germany, the country that destroyed my family.
Right.
So it was a very painful experience to have to go there. Yeah.
So after that, is it Convoy?
After Cross of Iron was Convoy, yeah.
Right.
And Convoy was the last film I worked with Sam.
Which, I've heard about the ending of the making of the Cross of Iron, and I understand that there was a lot of film shot. You ran out of film on the Cross of Iron, but there was too much film shot on Convoy. Yeah. And that was the last. That's he made Osterman Weekend, which was his last film after that. But you went on then to a big career on your own in Los Angeles, kind of redefining yourself.
Osterman Weekend is what I call post Katie.
And it shows. And but you
and ironically on Osterman Weekend were a lot of people that I worked with. Yeah, Rutger Hauer.
Mm-hmm.
Because I produced. I was one of the many producers on Blade Runner.
Right. Which is, the beginning of your new life, your new era, and redefining yourself in Los Angeles on Blade Runner.
Right.
And then you got involved in the community. You started giving back and involved with, people who needed a hand up in Los Angeles. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit today because you're honored by your home country, by the Queen of England,
by the Queen,
with Queen Elizabeth, and
yes, I got what's called an MBE, member of the British Most Excellent Order of the British Empire,
which is just remarkable and beautiful, and because you've changed the lives of so many people with your passion for community.
Oh yeah, I started film programs and Shakespeare programs in inner city schools, teaching film and Shakespeare to kids from South Central Los Angeles. But most importantly is I started a cricket team in Compton,
I think that's remarkable.
Teaching cricket to gang members in Compton to get them out of the systems and that they were involved in that were lethal to them, and cricket became a sport that they could play. That many other kids have never heard of cricket, and now cricket is going to be in the Olympics for the first time in 2028. So I started the first ever cricket team out of Compton, and took them to England playing cricket and Australia.
Now, has anyone ever made a documentary or shot some film about what you've done there?
Yes. There was a documentary that just was screened in London last week. It's called The Homies and the Pops, which is the name of the team. And it was also called the Compton Cricket Club, but also the Homies and the Pops.
Well, interesting.
And there's 2 documentaries made about the cricket team, and I'm hoping to make a film about them as well.
What a legacy, Katie. Just an anecdote I should share with you. The British consul in Los Angeles contacted the Secretary of State of Arizona about a month ago and said, we want to come to Prescott, Arizona for the 4th of July. And so we hosted 2 members of the staff of the British consul in Los Angeles here at Charlotte Hall Museum, and the rodeo hosted them for the rodeo parade and the rodeo show. They chose to spend their for the 250th anniversary of America here in Prescott. And
Did you tell them that you knew me?
Well, it was, I'm going to follow up with them. It was, you talk about, they arrived in the middle of our American Heritage Day and then on to the parade the next day and the rodeo. And we want to connect with the British consul and Prescott and keep that relationship going.
All right.
They really had a wonderful weekend here, and we were so pleased that they chose Prescott to celebrate the 4th of July.
That's amazing. What a coincidence.
Oh, most definitely. And I think there's your cricket team, and you also talked about some of you started some programs that have helped inspire young people to go into the film industry.
Yes, at a school called Washington Prep. I started a movie class, and learning, and also a Shakespeare program, teaching them Shakespeare, and they were very closely connected to Shakespeare, because Shakespeare is written in iambic pentameter, as is rap, so that they were able to perform Shakespeare using the iambic pentameters. Da-dum, 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 da-dum is rap, and so is Shakespeare. So they were easily adaptable to the Shakespeare's plays, acting and performing in Shakespeare.
That is beautiful. I mean, I don't think I ever realized that. That is remarkable, and something that you
Romeo and Juliet and Midsummer Night's Dream, and were performed by inner city kids from South Central.
My goodness, and
in parks all around Los Angeles.
That's really what a legacy to help the city and to bring that culture between the Shakespeare and film and cricket, which I just love. That, and you're quite a sports fan, Katie. I think this is a side to you. I know that you were always in tennis, cricket, soccer.
Tennis, cricket, and soccer. Everything British.
Well, you have been an ambassador for culture through filmmaking, through your career in Hollywood, surviving your years with Sam Peckinpah. In that film, what a legacy there with Sam, and then your own legacy as a filmmaker. You went on to make some films, continue after Blade Runner for quite a few years, and now you're working on, I believe, your own memoirs, as well as continuing to serve the underserved communities in Los Angeles.
Yes, hopefully. And one of the honors that I got, which I will always cherish, which I have looking at in front of me, is the Martin Luther King Keeper of the Dream Award that was presented to me Sunday, January the 17th, 2010, in sincere appreciation for your extraordinary leadership in assisting our youth in realizing the utility and cultural aspect of education while aiding them in becoming, as in the word of Dr. King, more efficient to achieve with increasing facility the legitimate goals of their lives, for embracing Dr. Martin Luther King's philosophy and principles of justice, equality, and peace, and for reminding us that all people are here to a legacy of dignity.
As you know, Katie, I am honored to know you and to be your friend. But that's, what a legacy from growing up in London to have achieved what you have done through and overcome all the obstacles that faced you, the tragedy in your family, and to leave a legacy of art and culture and community. You really define, the best of what we can all hope to be.
Well, thank you.
Well, and I hope that
and when you talk about giving back, when I got an award from the University of Bedfordshire, and I said, for those things that we just discussed, and I got the award when at the graduation of a lot of students from that time, and I told them all that giving back is much more important than taking, and I said to them, therein lie the richest rewards, of giving, and I can safely say that's how I look at it. I've been enriched by the rewards that I've got back from what I've given.
Well, I know that working here at Charlotte Hall Museum, that our founder, Charlotte Hall, the two of you would have been as thick as thieves. She's a woman who left a great legacy of inspiration as one of the first leaders here in Arizona who helped inspire the preservation and the education and preservation of our history and culture, and help pass that mission on to us here today. And I know that she would really have loved to have known you, because you have followed in the footsteps of her, what her life was all about. And we hope that you will be able to join us, Katie, in person or on screen for our special evening celebrating Junior Bonner here in Prescott on August 5th at the Hazeltine Theater. And we also, Katie, I want to follow up with you to do an oral history on the making of the film for our archives and library here. But I really appreciate your time today here on Arizona Roundup, talking about filmmaking, about your life, and you're a remarkable woman, Katie, and I'm glad to be able to call you my friend, and I'm grateful for your friendship with my family over the years and your contribution to Prescott's history and Arizona filmmaking history. It's Junior Bonner is considered one of the finest films made in Arizona in the last 55 years, and its legacy stands tall as a very creative picture with a creative team that came together that summer of '71.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks for listening to Arizona Roundup with Stuart Roseberg and Katie Haber at Charlotte Hall Museum, and we look forward to seeing you all here in Prescott on August 5th as we celebrate the 55th anniversary of the making of Junior Bonner with Katie Haber and Bill Pierce, both two very important people who made that movie happen that summer. A film that lives on in its legacy as one of the finest pictures that Steve McQueen and Sam Peckinpah ever made. And thanks for Katie Haber helping to enable its production and its success.